Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by John Deere. Thanks for your continued support of the Moving Iron Podcast. Got Greg Machiner, Pete Peterson on here to talk about what's going on in the world of equipment. Greg, how you doing, bud?
Hey, I'm doing well, Casey. How about you?
Doing well, man. So we've typically this time of year auctions are kind of starting to slow down, but it feels like they're getting picked up. So I guess as you watch this weekend, I watched several sales go through, saw a lot of stuff pop through my email feeds and everything else that I seem to clutter my inbox with on sell bills and what have you. But it seemed like this weekend was a very abnormally busy weekend this late into spring.
Yeah, this past end of this last week, so what, as we're talking, it would have been Saturday, April 5th, very busy. And usually it does start to slow down after like St. Patty's Day. But I think a couple of things at work, Casey. I think, a lot of farmers, it depends on your situation, but, there's pressure on the lending front. So maybe we're seeing some of, on the regional consignment sales, whether they're in person or online, folks selling, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces to help the cash flow situation. So yeah, it was interesting, when there's a high volume of sales or, just seeing what everything sold for. And I did find Saturday to be interesting. I thought pretty much a continuation of what I've been seeing maybe the last 6 weeks or so. So auction prices splitting on condition, but definitely saw some very strong points. A couple that jumped to me. There was a sale in Oklahoma, I think Guyman, Oklahoma, Saturday, at a 20 model John Deere S780. I think it had 1,250 engine hours on it. Brought 245. And it was interesting in the discussion. Someone had mentioned that I think that same combine had no sale somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 back maybe 4 or 6 weeks ago. So there's that little jump we talk about. And that kind of got me looking at specifically on 20 model S780 combine values. And I think the exact number, if I look, is up 10% this year versus last year average auction price. And I think a couple things there. I think last year in 24, there was such an aggressive drop because dealers are just, hammered stuff out to auction. So to see a 10% bump, on a 5-year-old combine, pretty significant. I think the average this year is running a 223.7 on a 20 model. Again, the one Saturday brought 245 in Oklahoma. Last year, the average auction price on a 20 model S780 was just under 203.3. Now, same day, this past Saturday, finishing about that same time, we had a little consignment sale, actually a large consignment sale in Southwest Minnesota. Randy Buncher auction, a great auctioneer out there, had a sale in Worthington. And he had a couple of tractors that got my eye. One was he had a Case 2590. I think like 6,091 hours on it, but the picture of it was just beautiful. The clouds maybe took it at that magic hour, 4:35 p.m. or something. But that probably like 19.5. I think that was like the fourth highest 2590 I've ever seen. But more intriguing to me was the 2011 Case H Magnum 315, 1,678 hours on it. Beautiful rig, really sharp, and that sold for 155. And again, when I pull back and look at the average auction price on a Magnum 315 versus last year, similar to what we saw in the John Deere Combine, it's up 8.1% so far just through Q1 into early April. So, if the equipment is in good condition, again, even through Saturday here, that's, continuation. We're seeing the dollars there. And maybe as farmers, the belts are awful tight out there. So it's sort of a need basis. What you need, and when the right used piece comes along, if you're not buying new, that's where you get maybe 3-4 people want the same thing and price goes up a little bit.
Yep. Well, with the with the guys you've talked with, Greg, over the course of the last couple of weeks here, anybody talk to you at all about the Case IH CNH, where they've stopped production, which doesn't
right.
I don't want to say they stopped shipment and of equipment through North America and Europe till they get this tariff thing figured out. Anybody brought anything up that to you about anything?
I haven't heard anything specifically like actionable. I guess my first reaction to it, Casey, was just made sense to me. I mean, on the one hand, if new sales are, depressed right now, which we understand why, it, logistically becomes a little easier to make that type of move, significant nonetheless. So I think the interesting thing right now, and again, we're all dealing with this day by day, almost hour by hour, tariffs and government, support. I think Bloomberg just had a report within the last 90 minutes about, support against the tariff effect. But farmers, the cost of new has always been a driving factor in the used market, that high cost of new. It accentuates the value of a really nice 3, 5, 8, 10, 12-year-old tractor, combine, sprayer, whatever. So now with this tariff thing looming, we're kind of all left to guess, well, boy, how much is this going to affect the price on the new combine or that new sprayer or whatever? And in general, in particular, again, when farmers are having to keep the belts tight, especially on the grain side, is that maybe giving one more little push to, okay, well, if that makes me look in the used market, as opposed to that price of new going to go up even more. I don't know. It's like I say, it's new. We're all dealing with these things, but it drives me back to, you put that asset up for sale, like that Magnum 315 Saturday in Worthington, and it just brings what it brings. And again, that number is up 8.1% over last year.
Yep. Yeah, I've had a conversation with you guys, and no one's really pushing the panic button yet, because again, this is a short-lived thing. They're going to figure out the tariff situation, what that means to them, and they're going to move forward with whatever. It's like it's going to be a 9-month or a 12-month stop, right? I mean, this is going to be one of those things that is probably a 3 to 4 week deal to get things figured out with what they're doing. But again, I haven't really heard much of
One thing though, if we both enjoy history and data, so we talk a lot about looking for historical clues in past downturns. Now, granted, this time there are a lot of different. There's kind of a ton of moving points. Yeah, you got the political stuff, you got tariffs, you got drought. It's all of a sudden it's swamp in Ohio and Kentucky, Tennessee. But versus the last downturn, which kind of was mid 13, through 15 is when we saw it, a big drop. I think it's interesting to talk about the difference at the manufacturer level. And this case, New Holland, that announcement is just another little data point there of the aggressiveness of, at the manufacturer level to pinch off that production of new equipment. Now, easy to do when no one feels like, or not many folks feel like buying. But like we've talked about, it helps retain that pricing power if you're a manufacturer or a dealer, so that a dealer doesn't get saddled with way too much new on the lot. I remember back in 15, there was a lot of new and used, of course, and leasing took off like a rocket ship. For the most part, I think dealers, feel good that they aren't saddled with a ton of new stuff. But again, that's kind of that dance between the dealer and the manufacturer. Like, hey, let's control the production of new, which, that's the thing to be aware of on the farmer side long term, is that because that production of new is pinched, whenever the demand spikes, it's going to be against, limited availability. And on the used side, 2024 dealers went through a very painful period of, our data showed 125 to 150% jump in that 0 to 3-year-old amount of stuff auctioned. The dealers didn't want to do that, but they just kind of had to. So they're continuing to work down. There's still quite a bit of availability, but again, it sort of points me, all these things, Casey, if you're able, a lot of dealers, you're going to have some pretty attractive interest offers to try and move that 2-year-old, whatever, tractor combine. And I think 2025, it's hard to know how we'll feel about it in 27, but I think we might look back and say that this 25 was a pretty good year to buy if you could.
I agree. I think right now through 2025, I don't think it's going to be. Well, we're already seeing it right now, right? So prices at auction are up over what they were in January.
They are.
And they're up what they were in January of 2024, right? So,
Yep.
and we're seeing that pattern come into play. All of that too is, we've hit the bottom now. We're starting to bounce back up a little bit to what the new normal is going to look like and seeing things stabilize out. Do I think that through 2025, the same trajectory that we're seeing as pricing at auction is going to keep climbing and it's going to be like a straight rocket ship up? No, but that being said, if which when I've talked about this for a while, if you look at where things are at now coming out of the factory, because all that stuff was ordered in 2024 for 25 delivery. Nobody's going to be rushing to the dealership and doing buying a bunch of new stuff for 26 delivery. Typically, what happens, and Greg, you've probably seen this happen as many times as anybody else has, but if you watch things happen, it's whatever happens at the end of harvest, the money, the situation that they feel how good they feel about harvest is what they do for. Then they go order stuff for 2020, the next year's delivery, right?
Right.
The thing about agriculture equipment and agriculture in general is that everything takes 12 months to make a cycle, right? You gotta go through planting, the cropping cycle, through the harvest cycle, and then you get your money at the end, and then you start making decisions about what you're going to do for next year. And
right.
We can see the good things coming from a long ways away, and you see the bad things coming from a long ways away. You just get to enjoy the pain or the rejoice and the happiness that's coming for a year.
Enjoy the pain. That's hey, that you might have just had the description of I guess farming and being a dealer.
Yeah.
Enjoy those periods of pain. It is interesting again on the history data front. Casey, I got looking the other day at that last big down, which was the biggest downturn I've ever seen, and that started Q2 of 13.
Yep.
And auction pricing down, rest of 13 down, all of 14 down, all of 15. The next quarter, I saw just a teeny little bump up, and it was small. It was January of 16. Yep. So it took just under 3 years for that fall, and then boom, a little bit, wasn't like a magical jump up, just a little. We found a footing. Now this time, you and I have been talking about this. It feels like it's condensed.
Yeah.
So basically from Q1 of 24 to Q1, it's 1 year versus over 2.5, almost 3 years. So again, to me, it's just the farm equipment space, new and used holistically, now versus a decade ago is more efficient. And to me, that's fewer dealers, larger, better capitalized. We saw especially last June through November, dealers just smashed stuff out to auction. That was that 125 to 50% jump in the 0 to 3-year-old stuff.
Yep.
And I'm sure if I was a dealer, I didn't like the prices I got, but they did it. And
Yep.
A decade ago, they couldn't because maybe you had 4 or 5 stores, not whatever 30, you fill in the blank. So yeah, it's interesting to analyze it and I guess be old and be able to look back and compare notes.
Yeah, the thing about this year, this down cycle with you this time was that obviously COVID messed up everything, right? I mean, the way that thing kind of took place and took hold and did what it did, and supply chain issues, all that. But as soon as it picked back up and supply chain issues got fixed, right? The amount of equipment that got delivered was just mind-blowing. It went from 0 to everything. And I kind of calculated it as about 2.5 years worth of inventory hit the marketplace in 2023. And which you think that I thought about this, that the downturn would last a lot longer than it did, or than what we're seeing before we started seeing some kind of leveling out. But it also kind of makes sense too that with the speed of which the supply hits the marketplace, now you should see the speed of which the market now comes to terms with what's there. Because the thing about 14 was, in 2012, a bunch of stuff got ordered for 13 delivery, right? 13 was still kind of a decent year as far as crop, commodity prices go. So people at the end of 13 ordered a bunch of stuff again for 14 delivery. Well, by the time 14 happened, I mean, planters and air seeders were windbreaks on most lots at that point.
Those were tough.
And the thing that we saw this time around was that it wasn't necessarily planters or air seeders or combines or tractors or whatever. It was kind of everything was the problem, right? Everything was an issue, right? And of course, combines got micromanaged because that's, when you get your used equipment badge at the dealership, that's the first thing they tell you to pay attention to is your combine inventory. But I mean, you go back and look at where tractor inventory is today, 175 plus horsepower tractor inventory is today. It is almost unit for unit where it was in August of 2014. So that tells me that, and think about it from the perspective of what a tractor, a 1-year-old tractor costs or 2-year-old tractor costs in 2014 versus what it costs today, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge jump. We're talking probably 150% more than what it was back in that time frame.
Yeah, massive.
As you're watching that stuff come together, man, it makes sense that maybe this compression thing is a little bit different this time around than it was, because of people now are more apt to understand what's going on. And there were a lot of dealerships that took advantage of, the first guy to take stuff to auction is always the biggest idiot on the planet. But in retrospect, hindsight's 2020, they're the smartest guy on the planet.
First in line is better than last in line, my friend.
That's right. What's that saying? First one through the wall is the one that gets bloodied. And that's
machine repeat rule from 35 years. No, you flip that on the buying side. We maybe talked about this, but when you sell choice, always buy the first.
That's right.
That's the second, third go higher.
Yeah.
But you hit on something that pretty important, Casey. And again, we're all hurtling through time now. We're all so busy, and it's hard to pull back and realize and just appreciate the differences, versus a decade ago. Or I'm so old, I remember pre-internet days, that kind of stuff. But 10 years ago, the chair you were in, I mean, you were sitting right in the middle of the hurricane, trying as a dealer to move inventory, 2-3-year-old tractors, combines, heads, planters, sprayers. But the information flow and conversation, I mean, we're sitting here on Moving Iron Podcast, and we're putting out conversation like this, talking about what sold, 2 days ago, versus a decade ago. Just the flow of information is so much faster now for a dealer, but also for farmers. And, when, again, you said COVID did its thing, one of the things to me is that we all jumped the shark tank at the same time in terms of, transparency about pricing, online auctions, the whole bit. So, now, even though, farmer in Kentucky, they're totally plugged in to what, is selling tomorrow in Wyoming or, Montana or Texas. And back in 2014, it was still more provincial. So a Minnesota guy would be like, look at Iowa, 5 states, but you didn't give a hoot about stuff in, Ohio or Kentucky. Now they don't even think about it. They're just like, yeah, that's what I need. Click the button.
Right. Yep. And, the internet auction has been around for probably at that point, 2014, 15 years. You're probably looking about 8-9 years worth of good, internet auction site. Big Iron had been doing it for that whole time, but it was still the live auction / proxy bid backup,
online bidding, right? Yeah,
bidding thing going on, right? So you had that scenario, and today, and then also too, the data that you could go find was kind of limited. I mean, you had to really know where to go to look and go to find something.
You had to pay Machine Repeat $99.95 back when we had a subscription base.
Yeah.
Now you just go to Google and it's we still hope people come to Machine Repeat. We still have it for free for you.
Yep.
But the flow of information it's so different than 10, 15 years ago for dealers and farmers and, even for manufacturers.
Yeah.
It just seemed to me, my dad got into the dealer business in 1963, and he's the one who advised me to start out when I was 23. Hey, you should compile these auction prices. It's good info. And it's just, moving away from gut level. And now gut level is great. We all have our gut level reactions. Hey, I think stock market's going to go up, down, whatever. But the more trusted data points you have, I mean, you just make better decisions over the long run. Is everyone perfect? No, but they're better decisions. A decade ago, when you and I would talk, and you were out on the front edge, clawing, for new data and insights to keep ahead of other dealerships, and you did it. That wasn't easy back then. And now, like I say, guys can click a button, and I guess it's good. It's and I think, again, to me, back to what I said, the whole space is just more efficient, which is a good thing. And I just think if you're on the farmer side of it, and don't base your equipment decisions on your past experience of last downturn, or I remember my dad said coming out of the 80s, this happened with tractors or whatever. It's a fast world right now, really fast. And so just be aware.
Very much so. Very much so. And you got to be, I used to love it. I think I'd have it figured out, and I kind of got everything, inventories in place. We're all moving like we're supposed to. And then lo and behold, I'd totally forget to look at the sold ahead board, and oh my gosh, you're going to have this all over again. And, you picked the month. And so
it's a dangerous feeling when you figure when you got everything figured out. It's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I remember when the storm would come through, my grandpa would be outside, from Kansas. So when the sirens go off, you run outside to see what's going on. And, so you go out there, and he'd always say, like, as long as you don't feel a calm, we're going to be doing okay. When you start feeling the calm, that's when bad things are going to happen. And
now that was good grandpa wisdom. I'm the same. I don't mean to discount that gut level wisdom. Your grandpa just didn't have available to listen to Moving Iron podcast or 19 other weather forecasts and stuff. So it's just the world is different, and change is a constant, and change is difficult, but I mean, really, it's a beautiful thing. If you lean into the right information, I think.
And just like you can probably attest to the same thing, but with all the data that's available now and all of the information flow and speed of information, those kind of things, for as much as things changed, they've stayed pretty much the same. The same influences, the same factors, the same processes, everything else they're pretty much the same. It's just you have you have offensive linemen that run 4.6 40s now, not 5.5.
Now that is a great analogy, Casey. It's I was watching football last fall, and some linebacker tore a pec, and I was thinking, when I was a kid, I don't remember ever hearing about any football player tearing a pectoral muscle. But did the Purple People Eaters pound weights all the time? No, they were just unbelievable athletes. Now, weight training. I mean, it's just getting better. I do find you're totally, as always, you're right on it, Casey. Things change, but at the core, they're still the same. So in this current used equipment market, people ask me, "Hey, Machinery Pete, why do you think you've seen a little bump with good conditioned used equipment?" And it's like, well, I mean, what's the number one truth? If you're a farmer, and I live in the upper Midwest, so we're getting ready to go up here. Okay, what do you need? You need reliable, dependable equipment, whether that's new or used. And if you're not buying new, because we understand why, then, like you said, tons of new was purchased the last couple of years, but, maybe that a second sprayer, plant, or whatever, I got to have the best because I can't have downtime. And I don't think that's changed, and I don't think that part of farming will ever change.
No, I won't. Well, probably a good place to stop, Greg. If you got a lot of speaking engagements that you do, folks want to hire you to do that, what's the easiest way for them to do that? Just go to Machinery.
Just hop to our website, machinerypete.com, and down on the bottom, folks, you'll see a little contact link. You can send a note to our office. Ann and Dan there probably catch your email, and they'll get it right to me. And so a great team. And just reach out or drop me a note on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And any questions you might have, happy to chat, see if we can help.
Right on. And plus, you read all your blog posts on agweb.com. Check it out there.
Yep, you bet.
Right on. Well, Greg, appreciate you. Catch you again next week. So with that, let's take a quick commercial break here, and we'll be back with more Moving Iron Podcast.
Looking for more accuracy, more productivity from your current planter? Let's get exact with precision upgrades from John Deere. Start with Exact Emerge and get accurate singulation and spacing at 10 miles per hour. Or choose Exact Shot to promote early root growth and cut fertilizer costs. And with Furrow Vision, save time by verifying seed depth right from your cab. Visit johndeere.com/planner upgrades and see why nothing runs like a deer.
Hello, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. I've got the privilege to have the guys from Valley Transportation back on here again. I got Parker Johnson and Brad Graff from Valley Transportation and the fun stuff they're doing over there. Cool thing about this is that Valley Transportation is the preferred, trucking company of machinerypete.com. If you're on machinerypete.com and you're looking to truck something there's a trucking button that you can click on that takes these guys over here. And I've worked with these guys for a long time, and I'm glad to have them on here as part of that, because the cool thing about working with Valley Transportation and some of the other companies that we've worked with is that when I tell you I got a 780 combine to ship across the country, you guys know what I'm talking about. I don't have to go out and measure it and tell you all the stuff about it. You guys know what's going on there. So guys, glad you could be on the podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Casey.
Right on. Well, let's do a little introduction first. So Brad, let's start with you first. Talk about I guess your journey in the trucking business. You've been doing it for a long time, and kind of introduce yourself and what you're doing at Valley Transportation.
Yeah, so I started back in '89 with Valley Transportation. I worked at a trucking company hauling farm equipment, construction equipment prior to that for about 6 years before I started on my own. So we started with 2 trucks, and we're up to about 200 now. So 36 years later. So we're kind of growing a lot. We've seen a lot of different markets and a lot of different opportunities, that we've reached onto. So things have transpired. We got there's 45 people in the office, and almost 15 to 19 in the shop. So got a maintenance facility on location. Got another yard in Waterloo, Iowa by the factory. Just do a lot of hauling in and out of there and transferring the equipment around to get the loads filled up and get them out and delivered to everyone. So that's about it for me. So
Parker, talk about what you're doing at Valley.
Yeah, so I started back in September of 2011. So I've been here for a little while, and I farm a little bit on the side with my dad and mom, and I'm a customer service guy here. So anybody that calls in and needs prices on moving equipment, I'm the guy to talk to. And like you mentioned with Machinery Pete, anything you need hauled that you're looking at on their website, all you got to do is hit that transportation button, and the request comes directly to me, and I get a price back to you just as soon as I possibly can. A lot of ag construction equipment all over the country, a few other manufactured goods and stuff too, but primarily ag and construction. We can do it all from skid loaders to 125,000 pound wheel loaders and cranes. So we move quite a vast array of equipment.
Yeah, that's what the nice part about working with guys like with your company. You have the opportunity to, like you said, I can call you and say, hey, I've got a skid steer I need to get from A to B, or I've got you picked a piece of equipment and you guys are going to be able to haul it. I think that's the differential thing there, because I'm sure everyone that's listening to this, if you've got a phone call from a freight company or something like that, 9 times out of 10 they're a brokerage service that doesn't even know the person that they're even talking to on the other end, and they're trying to figure out and try to be the middleman between what's going on there. And I've got I need a step deck. Do I need a detached? Do I need a flatbed? Like, what do I need to have to make this thing work the way it needs to work? And what's the most economical fashion to do that? And I can tell you right now, working with you guys over the past 15 years, probably now 17 years now that I've been doing this, I don't have to answer those questions. I just tell you what it is, and then you tell me when the truck's going to be there, and I have my stuff ready to go. And I think that's the key factor about working with a partner like you, is that it's not a guessing game, that when the guy shows up that he's either has the right trailer. I mean, I've done that before where guys showed up and they've had the wrong trailer. They wanted to put a combine on a flatbed. And I'm like, you're going to bang every bridge between, you're not even going to get out of town before that thing gets wrecked on the bridge. So So
Yeah.
let's go back to the
Yeah.
drawing board, you know.
We've hauled it all, and we our system. I mean, we can look back at every single thing we've hauled before, and if it's something out of the ordinary, we can see what we did before and have the have the experience in moving it. And if it's something a little out of the ordinary or whatever you want to call it, but we got a really experienced team here in the office and on the driver crew too.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's the key factor that comes into play here. Another thing I like about what you guys are doing is that not only do you have your own fleet of trucks, Brad, you talked about 200 trucks you have in your fleet. You also have your own brokerage service that you're working with, and you're again, because you guys do it so much, which carriers you can count on to do what. So I guess talk a little bit about that and how you guys are incorporating that into your business.
Yeah, it's a good addition to our market, because we get a lot of freight in certain areas where we get overloaded. So we work with a lot of the carriers that we know and that we've vetted already that we're sure that they can handle the same thing we can. So we'll take it and work with them and get them to move it for you too. So it still shows up to you when you need it and when we promise it, so it really helps when times get busy and we get overloaded and we need the extra help from the outside to get it moved. So, and that's just a simple call, you just call into our customer service guys and we take care of it from there. As long as you're okay with it moving however we see to get it to you, we'll make sure we get it there. So we do all the vetting as far as the insurances that those carriers have, and we keep all that on file and make sure that they got the same coverage that we do, that you're covered for the entire process. So we do have $1 million worth of cargo insurance. We can add more if we get into a situation where your piece of equipment is more valuable than that. Most of the time that'll cover it. But the way things are getting nowadays, it gets to be more. So
yeah, $1 million used to cover quite a bit. Today, I think you just get tires and rims basically for about $1 million.
Right? Yeah. It's sure a lot different.
9RX 710s or 770s or 30s.
Yeah, that's it's amazing what you look
We've been
at.
hauling quite a few of them, the new 9RXs here recently. They've been the production's really ramped up on them, and I think this week alone, I put 5 or 6 in the computer, and they're either on their way or going to be picked up in the next day or two.
Yeah,
they're massive.
That's a big
30s are 85,000 pounds. 710s are 73.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. When you guys are looking at, again, so like I said, the great thing about working with these guys, just what you talk about, it's easy for me to have that conversation with them because I know I'm dealing with a legit company. What are some of the questions that if you were a guy like me that's looking to ship something, what are some of the questions you'd ask the potential hauler to vet them through to make sure that, one, that they're getting, I'm going to get where it needs to go, and B, that they have, like you talked about, the right amount of insurance to cover that?
Yeah, so there's some websites you can kind of look up their MC number too, and it gives you kind of a background on them, out of service, accidents, stuff like that. Internet Truck Stop is a website a lot of people use to find freight, and you can kind of get a feel for the company off of that as well. Whether they pay their bills or, accidents, like I said, or any of that stuff. So they're kind of graded, so you really pay attention to it. And then the same deal, if we use them before, we keep notes on everything. If we've had issues with them before in the past, you burn me once, that's kind of the end of it.
Yeah,
can't keep putting freight on unreliable carriers.
Yep. Typically, we use the same ones all the time, so we don't go out. We've used them so much that we kind of know which ones to stick with and which ones not to. So we got a pretty good feel there. We watch their safer score, and we can tell how good of a company they are by that. So it's a pretty pretty simple deal when you know what to look for and can figure it out, so.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them carriers that we use regularly that kind of rely on us for, keeping their trucks loaded as well. So they're always asking and emailing our brokerage department, what do we have, and if they got a truck in the area, and they're a good hauler for us, we'll definitely load them. But obviously we want as much freight on our trucks as as possible. But in the busy times, it's hard to keep up.
Yep. So this time of the year is always, and this time of the year just in general is a lot of stuff moving around because, like you said, stuff coming in out of the factories and new deliveries usually coming getting jockeyed around. What's the one or two pieces of equipment out there that you guys are seeing kind of as a reoccurring theme as you guys are hauling? You hauling a lot of construction stuff, you hauling a lot of ag stuff around. Like, what are you feeling right now? That's the biggest chunk of your business right now.
It's definitely a combination of both. I mean, within the last few weeks, the tractors that are getting kicked out of the factories have, the volumes increased. Sprayers in Ankeny, it's kind of a springtime thing when a lot of them come up and get produced. It's a year-round thing, but now we're just getting multiples every day, and tractors too. On the construction side, a lot of excavators moving out of Kernersville, North Carolina. All the factories right now they've really upped their production or something. So hopefully it stays like that the rest of the year.
Yep.
Probably one thing that we see that's down a little is combines. I think the market's kind of flooded on combines, so I don't think there's as many of those getting ordered as years past. So I think that's a little less than what we've seen before. So,
yep, for sure.
And with it being plant season, there's been a lot of quotes for planters coming in, and I need it tomorrow. Got to get it in the shop, got to get it ready to go.
Yeah.
Wait till the last second and then hurry.
Yeah, you had 365 days from the last time you quit using it to get the word out, and you need 15 days, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the. I love this time of the year, man. It's always that last minute push, and it's usually the last minute push is about 90% of the feels like sometimes. So it's and this year's probably a little different than normal just because of the uncertainty that they've seen. Most guys have been kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, and here we see what's going on. So it's a definitely do or die time right now as we get this getting planting season for sure.
Yeah, I had to chuckle yesterday. I was out and about, and I met one of our trucks. He had a big IH planter on there, and I just had to chuckle because he was going north. So that guy's a week away from planting, and he's just getting his planter delivered. So.
Exactly. That is exactly right. Exactly right.
I think the insurance date is either the 10th or 12th this month. So you're planning after that, but I think the ground's definitely too cold yet to start seizing the ground. I would think. Hoping my dad wants to wait a week or something.
Right. For sure.
Having their feet sit in the ground for 3 weeks before it sprouts.
Yeah, that always works out well for everybody when that happens. Usually have to replant.
The replanting isn't very fun, and it doesn't pay very good.
No, it doesn't pay very good, does it?
No. Double the fuel.
For sure. Well, guys, I appreciate you taking time to be on the podcast, talk about what's going on there. Obviously, you can go to machinerypete.com, pick any piece of equipment, and click that Valley Transportation button there, and that'll get you a quote. But if guys want to reach out to you directly, Parker, Brad, what's the best way to do that so they can get some quotes from you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a call at 800-657-4910 or shoot me an email at pjohnson@valleytransinc.com. And then also with that Machinery Pete deal, it's just one click away. And there's a lot of people that have reached out that have hauled for on it, and they've never shipped anything before, and they couldn't believe it was as easy as clicking a button.
Yep, for sure. And Brad, I'll throw this one out to you as we close on. If you're an owner operator or just a guy looking for a job driving, what's the easiest way to get a hold of Valley and kind of talk through what some opportunities might look like?
Yeah, call into the same 800 number, 800-657-4910, and just ask for our recruiting department. So we're always looking for owner operators, good owner operators to haul equipment. We got trailers, or we'll let you pull your own. So we're always looking to add there, and company drivers the same way. So if you're wanting to haul equipment, and we can, even if you're a van guy, we can put you in a van and start training you up to the step decks and double drops and stuff like that too. So we work with guys that way too. So
Right on.
And we got the freight to keep you moving too.
Yep.
Yep, definitely have plenty of freight going on there at Valley Transportation. Guys, appreciate you taking time to be on here. Look forward to doing this again. We'll catch you again next time.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks,
All right.
Casey.
Thanks, Casey.
Right on. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcast.
Well, there they are, mocking you. See you next year, loser. That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like Exact Apply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Mark Sean Hackett. Sean Hackett is with Hackett Financial out of Boca Raton, Florida. Nice enough to come on and talk about what's happening in the marketplace. Sean, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing super good. Super good.
We have got a lot of weather in the the market now. That's starting to get factored in slowly but surely, kind of easing into that. An incredible amount of rain out there. So, thoughts and prayers go out to all the folks out there affected by this massive amount of flooding. And in a lot of these areas, these that we're seeing, you're seeing anywhere between 8 to 15 inches of rain over a week's period of time, and that really is going to start talking about prevent, plant, and those kind of things that start coming into play there, replant, those kind of things that start to play out there. I guess, Sean, as you're looking at this, talk a little bit about, I know you track weather patterns way back, but I guess talk a little bit about this pattern you're seeing now and how it stacks up to some of the stuff you've seen in the past.
Well, we went back and tried to find another period where the core SRW wheat belt, the Southeast, the Delta, the Ohio Valley had anything like this. And we tediously went back to 1950, and we really couldn't find any event that was even close to this. I mean, we had anywhere from 8 inches to isolated 20 to 25 inches, averaging probably 10 to 12 inches in a wide area. We really haven't seen anything quite like this. And of course, the SRW wheat crop has been permanently, irreversibly damaged. I would, at least half the crop has been significantly damaged. Obviously, over time we'll be able to quantify that a little more, but there is no chance that this SRW winter wheat crop is going to be anything close to what we thought it was just a few weeks back. And of course, we still have the specter of a hard late freeze, in May that we've been talking about that could add insult to injury. We still have significant drought out west for HRW. So, we're kind of starting off the planting season here on a very poor footing, and I think it's a sign of more to come. And at some point, we're going to have to stop trading every tweet that President Trump puts out there on his Truth social media platform about whatever he thinks is happening with tariffs or not. And we still need to focus on how much supply we're going to have. At the end of the day, we still take the track that there's only one corn supply, there's only one soybean supply, and there's only one demand out there for each of these commodities. And we can argue what the plumbing is going to look like, who we're going to sell to, where they're going to get it from, how all that's going to logistically work out. But at the end of the day, it's going to, the system will find the correct plumbing for whatever the ultimate tariff arrangement is, which we still obviously are, days, weeks, and months away from knowing fully. And it still comes down to how much of that global supply we're going to have. And specifically in the corn market, we're looking at a second crop corn precipitation in the last 2 months has been the driest in 50 years. It hasn't been hot, but it's been the driest in 50 years, which means we're going to have another very, very poor crop in Brazil. Probably not a whole lot better than last year. And last year was not very good. It did not allow them to export a lot of corn. And so at the end of the day, I don't care who places what tariff on U.S. corn that they want. I don't see where anyone who needs to buy a lot of corn is going to be able to get it without buying it from the United States. So either they're going to pay up because they impose tariffs on our imports, or they're going to leave corn alone. So I'm really feel that we're going to start moving towards that kind of analysis than the play-by-play that's been driving the markets here over the last couple of weeks.
Right on. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about a couple weeks ago. The planting intention report came out. Obviously, corn is a big winner on that. Saw a huge amount of stuff come there, but cotton is the one that had the biggest reduction, looking about 12% cut in cotton acres as we start heading into that planting season. As you look at world cotton supply, I mean, obviously there's some issues there, but as you look at U.S. cotton, and you look at Indian cotton, and you start looking at other places like that, what are your thoughts on the cotton market, and how do you think this will ultimately affect what we see happen come harvest time during cotton season?
In a world of tariff uncertainty, in a world of economic uncertainty, are we going into recession or not, where banks are getting increasingly worried about getting their money back from people they've lent their money to, we have to remember that cotton is an extremely expensive crop to put in the ground. It costs a lot of money to put that crop in the ground. And where the price of cotton was before this takedown that we saw due to tariff concerns, it's just the acreage number that we came out with the planning. I think that's too high. I think it's going to come down. And remember, Casey, Western Texas, you can have abandonment as much as 50 or 60% of the dryland acres out that way can be abandoned, meaning zero because of poor weather, dry weather, that sort of thing. And it's been extremely dry in that area, and we think it's going to continue to be dry. And we think that the USDA's baseline 15% abandonment could turn out to be way too low, and that not only is the planted acres going to be problematic, but the actual harvested acres could be substantially below what is currently contemplated on abandonment being higher. So I don't care what your outlook is for the economy. There's, demand for cotton is not going to go to zero. There's going to be demand for cotton. And I just feel in an environment where every other country, whether that's India, whether that's China that grows a lot of cotton, who are also going to be experiencing, we think, droughts during the growing season, it's hard for me to see that supply will be enough to meet even recessionary demand. And that means at some point, when you run the spreadsheets, we're going to have to see these prices that are in the low to mid 60s, get to a place that at least make more sense. And I would think, maybe I'm not thinking correctly, but I would think, we probably need to do that before planting is done. So we might get a few extra acres, tucked away in there. If we don't, then it just makes the situation that much more interesting in terms of not having enough supply to meet demand. If we get trade deals, surprise trade deals, if we don't go into recession, if there's Chinese stimulus that creates a better Chinese economy, if we get better demand than we're thinking, then we could really, really be behind the eight ball. So I think that's the setup here. If you don't start off with planning enough, in my experience, those are markets that are very hard not to create a supply issue later on in the season, especially if there's any weather issues.
Right on. All right, let's talk a little bit, real quickly on oil. If you look where oil is at right now, West Texas oil opened up today at like $61. That's a $10 slide over the last month and a half or so, kind of where you saw things are at. As you looking at the oil market, we talked about this a little bit ago. We were talking about world supplies really, really high right now. As you start looking at that, and then you start looking at the talks about replenishing strategic oil supplies back into the U.S., as you see those two things kind of bouncing out, what are your thoughts?
Well, we've said a lot on your show and in our writings that it was very, very hard to feel positive about the crude oil market with excess capacity remaining in excess in Saudi Arabia, that at some point Saudi Arabia was going to pump more oil. They always do. And so OPEC, really, Saudi Arabia in the last OPEC meeting said they're going to start producing a lot more oil. So the market's coming down, and then we see that they're going to be investing trillions of dollars in the U.S. I just saw today or yesterday that they're going to be buying an enormous amount of U.S. LNG. So my theory so far playing out is that Trump has made a deal with them that if they pump more oil, will limit the downside maybe to the mid 50s. We'll replenish our petroleum reserve with hundreds of millions of new barrels that we'll need to allow the Saudis to pump more oil and not have the price collapse like it did the last time they did this to like 25 or 30. So they get what they want. We get what we would want, which is cheaper oil. The economy, the U.S. economy and the global economy get cheaper crude oil. And we get some more investment into the country, which of course is one of Trump's centerpieces, is to bring more money invested into the United States, for producing things. So I think that's the strategy. I really don't think the way that I see this playing out that we should go much below the mid 50s. If I'm correct about what I just said, I think the mid 50s is the low point. I think maybe $70 is the high point. I mean, that's your range that I think that they'll want to keep crude oil prices in. And right now we're just pressing the lower side of that just because of the negativity going on from the tariff war. And I do think that Trump wants to make an announcement about refilling the petroleum reserve when oil prices are near 55. So if it rallies to 65, he's still happy with the price. He doesn't want to make that announcement when it's 65 and it rallies to 75. And so I think there's some chess being played here between announcements, price, and how this all plays out. Of course, this is my theory. Nothing has been announced to say that what I just said is absolutely positively what's going on, but it is something that I believe we've talked about before, and it does make sense as to why OPEC would finally be producing more oil at this moment in time, just after announcing trillions of dollars of investment in the United States. It seems to fit what I just mentioned.
Right on. Okay. All right, Sean. Good place to stop. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about Hackett Financial. What's the easiest way to do that?
Our website is Hackett, HACKETT, advisors.com. We have a Twitter page at Paradex11. People can check us on both those places to see from time to time some of the things we put out about how we look at the future of ag prices and how we use our statistics cycles and correlations to make those predictions to see if that might be of value to those that watch and listen to your program.
Right on, Sean. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you being on the show, Sean. We'll catch you again next time.
Sounds good, Casey. Thanks.
Right on. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these great messages.
Well, there they are, mocking you. See you next year, loser. That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like Exact Apply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
Hello, and welcome back to the Moving Iron podcast. Aaron Findle back on here, the podcast about what's going on in the world of the equipment space. Aaron, how you doing, bud?
I am doing quite well. And yourself, Casey?
If I was any better, Aaron, I couldn't stand it.
Finer than frog hair.
Finer than frog hair. That's exactly right.
So fine.
So
Amphibious hair is so fine.
Hard to find. That's how fine it is. But it's that time of the year. We got spring planting coming in. They'll be here before you know it. Sugar beets will be going in the ground here pretty quick as soon as we get some soil temperature where we need to be. And the way it's been, we're going to have that soil temperature before too long. Right. And if you look down south, they're planting like crazy. So it's either in full swing or making its way to be full swing, right? And this is always the year that I used to love talking to guys when you would look at they'd always say like, I got this extra tractor over here. I'm not ready to do anything with it yet, right? I'm not ready to do anything with it yet, but thinking about doing something with it this fall or this, this summer or something like that. And you guys start having those conversations with them. And it was always fun to go down the rabbit hole of what are your options when it looks like to sell a tractor that you don't necessarily want to trade in on anything, but you would if the right thing came along, but you don't necessarily want to turn it to cash either because you might need it, but there's always that special circumstance out there for that extra tractor that's laying around. So
Right.
one of the things I used to like to talk about was, hey, you know what? There's always the sell yourself avenue, right? You can start going down that path, what that looks like. Or every Wednesday, there's an auction every Wednesday that you can go put
Monday, Tuesday.
There's an auction about every day of the week that you can go find, and you can do it right from the comforts of your home, right? And then you've got the good old fashioned, hey, maybe I wouldn't mind trading this in on whatever, you know. I always like this. I'm gonna trade this tractor in on a new Gator because my wife wants one, or you know, I'm gonna get the 1025R so my wife can mow, or those kind of things, you know.
Right.
So obviously we're talking about a tractor that's not a big hitter by any means. We're not talking about a $500,000 something. We're talking about something typically between 15,000 and about 30,000 bucks, right? And that's kind of where those things kind of start to fall in. Every once in a while you get the guy that have the $100,000 something, but a lot of the conversations I had are revolved around those $15,000 to $30,000 somethings.
Which, okay, you're just pour water on that a minute, just because of the numbers. 10 years ago, you're probably right, but today that is a $50,000 to $100,000.
Well, true. Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. So, and I guess if you think about it, if you wanted to get a new Gator for somebody, they're about 40 grand. So
yeah, I mean, that's where we're at.
That's where we're at. That's true. So crazy to think about something that's $40,000 that in most places you can't even drive on the street, but it's
your 4430 is a down payment on a Gator.
It's crazy. That's so crazy to think about, man. But anyway, so you're walking through that scenario with people, and it was fun to watch how their minds started to work, started to come around. And one thing that I was ultimately what tended to happen was the auction thing it's the unknown, right? I don't know what it's unknown. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to mess with done it on my own because, you know, then I got to take the phone calls and it's just the whole thing. And I don't have time for that. Sometimes you got that answer. A lot of times you didn't get that answer. Most of the times you didn't get that answer. You got, well, I'll try it first and then, you know, whatever happened. But it typically felt like it came back to, I'm going to take that paid for piece, get with the cash that I can. I'm going to go get the thing that I want at the dealership. And that's what it kind of felt like to me. When you're working with folks, what do you come across when you have those conversations?
You know, you're right. There's endless avenues you can go. The easy button is to auction it. That's also the most risk because you don't know everything else. You're in control.
Sure.
Whereas auction, you're not. The day you say yes to the auction, you're out.
Right.
So, but we have seen numerous times, and especially within the last, I would say 5 years, for the category of machine we're talking about. Nobody, you know, we're not talking about the spare 2-year-old. That's a, you know, spare 2-year-old machine. That's a whole different topic.
Right.
But for, you know, that extra rig on the farm, auction is not a bad avenue. You know, for 5 years or so, that's almost what private party dealers doing. You know, when you get to that age of tractor, there's the differential is so narrow, segment to segment, what you're going to do.
All right.
So I have seen in, other than, interesting enough, 21 and 22, a lot of guys sold their own thing.
Their own stuff.
All you had to do is put a picture on the middle, you know, in the middle of the ads, and boom, gone.
Yep.
So that over the last 10 years, though, is everybody's least favorite option. I don't want to deal with the scams. I don't want to deal with calls, and I got people that call me at 8, you know, and
right.
just our everyday life. But when you're a producer, that's not your everyday life, and you do not want to deal with that because you got enough going on.
Right.
So, I mean, it really depends. If a guy's going to have that discussion with someone, it really comes down to, I mean, even a series, a 50 versus a 55 in the deers,
Sure.
An 8950 Magnum versus an MX.
Right.
How you play each card is a different play in the game.
Yep.
The thing you said about trading, we've seen a lot of that here recently where things are very tight on the farm, and when things aren't tight, guys make sure they're well supplied with iron, and then when things are tight, let's get rid of what we can. The thing that is happening very much across the country, regardless of color, everybody's got a lot of inventory. So right now, a guy's, well, I want to trade both of these on that. Ooh, no, we'll do one for one.
Yeah,
not both. Now I will, because I'm a nitwit, and
guys given.
If a guy's trading 8 things, that's 8 things to sell, right?
That's right.
So there's different ways to look at it, but as far as if it's there again, Casey, if it's a $20,000 rig, yeah, trade it in on something else.
Yeah,
but there again, that's a tractor that's going to do its best at the auction.
Exactly. Yeah,
and
that's
the
that's
closer
the thing,
you get to 100. The worse it is at auction, the better you are to trade it maybe out of those 3 scenarios.
Yep.
But the quicker you're going to get a no if it's not the only thing on there.
Correct. Yeah. I think
so.
that's
it's a back to I don't know what to do with my hands thing,
Right. They have. I think the thing about that when you're looking at that is you're right. If you're selling at $25,000 something, it's $25,000 at the auction, or it's $25,000 on the lot.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yep.
Sometimes, for lack of a better term, bastardized way to go about doing that is the consignment approach.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Now, few dealers are excited about consignments, and here's why. Okay. If you're a producer and you're listening to this, you have to be realistic about what your consignment piece is worth, right?
Right.
And that's the part where, if you look at the dealer's lot and let's just say you have a $50,000 something, right? And the dealer has everything listed for $50,000, and you go out and watch the auction, and they're bringing 45 to 65,000 or something like that, and you're watching all these things move and all these moving parts go, and you're looking at the various websites that you can go look at and monitor what things are priced for. And $50,000 is the number that because you bring yours in and you want to get $75,000 out of it, it's not going to happen, right? Because you priced at $75,000. Even if you want to start there and you want to play the whole we'll just see what happens, and then we'll get we'll get a live one on the line here, and we'll see what happens. It's just not going to happen for you. So
right.
If you're coming in and you want to consign something and you want the dealer to consign that with you, by all means, I think it's a good avenue. I think there's opportunity there to make those things happen. But there again, your machine is in competition with everybody else's machine, and you're just like another piece out there. So if 50,000 is the market, and you've tried to list yours at 65 or 70 or something like that, it's
right.
It's just not going to happen. So
no, you're exactly right. Where through the last 2 decades of selling machinery, where I see that happen the most would be in that, say, 100 to 250.
Yep.
That realm, that segment is going to be where, well, I think it's worth this, and it's sold on auction for this, and the dealer's here. And that's the one it seems a guy is going to roll the dice with on the sell yourself part.
Sure.
You know,
Yep.
you can call, oh, I don't know, Machinery Pete, and list your machine on there. Say it's a $200,000 combine. Okay. You think it's worth 200. The dealer says it's worth 125 trade. Somewhere in there's the number, right? So for what that ad costs you as a percent of what the machine is worth, that would be how I would look at it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times you can throw an ad online for 500 to $1,000 for a machine and have a million pictures, everything. Tell your story. Important. Tell the story. If you're selling it yourself, I can't do that. Right. I'm your competition. Tell your story.
Yep.
Producer to producer, that's priceless.
Sure.
Greg says that all the time, you know.
Yep. 100%.
So, but that is like, I guess the way I look at it, I encourage guys to do that. He learns what it's really worth once the phone starts ringing.
Sure.
What guys are willing to do. So it gives him a better feel for it. I personally enjoy it. If he sells it, great. My job got easier. If he doesn't, then that's a discussion time to say, that's why this number was this number.
Yeah. I'd say one thing too, if you're going down the consignment route, spend some time with your dealer and have them walk you through how they got to the number they got to.
Right.
Right. And even if you're trading something in, sit with the guy that you're working with and have them walk through how they got there to it. If the salesman understands what's going on, most, I'd say most, about all of them anymore, there's very few places out there that don't have a centralized used equipment guy, right? Where someone other than the sales guy is looking at the piece of equipment, trying to figure out the number is, and then gives that number back and say, hey, here's what we think that we're
remove the emotions.
Yeah, remove the emotions out of the deal. But they should be able to come back to you with a, hey, this is why we got to where we're at, and this is how come we're pricing this piece of equipment we're at. So if you're going down that consignment route, or if you're trading something in, have them walk you through what that looks like, right? They're telling you that, hey, we're going to buy yours for X because we need to do these things to it. It's going to cost us this much to keep it on the lot, those kind of things, blah, 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 blah. And we ultimately think we're going to sell it for this amount of money. Right. Now, I would say that they're probably know what they're talking about because it's not the only tractor they've ever looked at, right? They've looked at several of those, not just in their lifetime, but just this week, right? So, so you know, I mean, so they have a pretty good feel for where the market's at. Plus, they know what they've sold stuff for in the past through dealer systems and those kind of things that they can go back and look at. So, go sit down with them, take a look at that, and then throw that number out there. And that's where I think if your advertised number, that's where I think you should start at.
Right. And for the producer trading to learn the story, it does not matter if it is an AF11 combine or a 4-foot Frontier blade. It's the same process for us to get to the number.
Yep.
And every single piece here has been through that.
Yep.
So this is how it works.
Yeah. And I think it's
and my favorite is, these guys over here are asking this. Why wouldn't you ask that? Did you call them or did you call me? You called me because I'm asking this on this machine and they're way over here.
Yeah. And there's a lot of
both ways, you know.
And there's a lot of things that go into that too, right?
Right.
Talk about, supply and demand and those kind of things that play into that. But I think ultimately, I think the consignment route is a great way to test the waters on what you're trying to do, if that's what you want to do. And, you got to work with your dealer and work through your dealer on that process. If they like the idea of you doing that, that's fine. But as far as them helping you go through that consignment process, some dealers are different about that than others. But I think as you ultimately pay attention to that, it's one of those things that you've got to start kind of figuring your way through because, just like anything else, there's trades involved and what's that look like and how's that work and, all that stuff comes into play too. So I think long story short here, what I'm getting at is if you really sit down and work with your dealer and they come up with a value, have them explain that a value to you, how they got that value, what the process was that got you to that point. And then once you get to that point, try to poke holes in it. And it's real easy for me to go to any website and say, hey, they're asking 125,000. You say you think mine's going to sell for 125, but I'm looking at, 30 of them that they're asking, 165, 170, 180, whatever. And I go, that's great. There's also 30 below it that are asking 100.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? So, I mean, like there's a lot of give and take there. When I was pricing used equipment, I wanted to price it. I didn't want to be the most expensive and I didn't want to be the cheapest. I wanted to be somewhere kind of in the middle to where, because what I'm trying to portray here is that the dealership that I work for, that the used equipment that we bring in, there's a value to that, right? We're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive, but the value that you get is the value that's going to be transparent to the customer, that I can easily understand and easily explain to. Hey, we think it's going to sell here based on where things are priced at, what the auction market's doing, and what our past retail data is showing. So we think this is where we think it's at. And ultimately, the past retail data is the most important piece of that, right? You can show whatever you want to, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's where do we start it at, and what do we end up actually taking for it, and that's the number that ultimately tells a story about price and value.
In a steady market, sales history is great.
Sure, yeah.
If you were to use that today, you would make a lot of $150,000 bad decisions.
Yeah, you would. But it's also, you go back and look at the last 4 or 5 that you sold, and what's that price, what's that look like, and where things are at. I think that's the thing that's important about understanding pricing is how they get to that. Because my joke all the time with sales guys were like, how'd you get that number? I was like, I just got the start board. It's got a bunch of numbers. I close my eyes and throw, and whatever it lands, that's what I price it at. But I knew you're right. I knew this whole time. I knew it. But it's really, it's a you go through and you look at what you sold stuff for, auction value, what stuff's being listed for. You try to look and see what supply is coming in, what supply is going out, where are the different the movements in the market. What's it look like and how things are moving, and you're trying to be, because believe me, as an old used equipment guy, we want to sell as much stuff as we can, right? So we're not going to price something so that we can't sell it, and that's and the same thing on the trade side. We want to give you as much money as you possibly can give you, right? But at the end of the day, there's a limit to that, and we have to kind of maintain that.
I mean, from a dealer standpoint, if we think we're going to steal it, we know we're not going to get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
The internet has shrunk the world to a grain of sand, man.
Yep. There's enough information out there that anybody can. It's all free. No one has to pay for anything.
Right.
Enough free information out there. Everybody can see what it's worth. So, long story short is, I think if you're in the market to sell that extra piece that you got, or you're going through the trade process now, you're thinking about doing something this fall or after playing season or something like that. There's a lot of avenues to take a look at as you look at the options that are out there to sell stuff. And I tell everyone that came in, explore them all and see which one makes sense. And as a guy that was a dealer, worked at the dealership, used equipment guy, those kind of things, I'm happy to give you my 2 cents on which one's the best for whatever your scenario is at any time. And I think that's the key to truly getting the most bang for your buck when it comes to your piece of equipment.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, man.
Just because a guy wants the price don't mean it's worth that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I'm sitting here preaching about this right now, but the minute I go trade my truck in, I'm the guy like, this guy's trying to steal from me something, And
I haven't traded a vehicle in over a decade.
Yeah,
they refuse to.
Yeah.
Now
I'm the opposite of what I'm talking about right now.
Right. I am not.
Yeah. So All right, good place to stop. Aaron, what folks want to reach out to you, what's the easiest way to do that?
Well, I tell you what, call me or text me, 308-760-1193. I am on Twitter, active once in a while, at Aaron Fintel on there. And you can email me, afintel@21equip.com.
Right on. Casey Seymour, you can find me anywhere at Moving Iron Podcast, Moving Iron LLC. You can find me all there. You can find this podcast. You hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was Jackie in the other room or something.
I don't know what that was. All right, let me start that over, Zach. All right. So I'm Casey Seymour. You can find me anywhere that you find podcasts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, all over the place. You can find this podcast at agweb.com. You can also go to Farm Journal Media's YouTube channel. You can find it there. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Aaron Fennell, Greg Machinery, Pete Peterson, and the fellows over at Valley Transportation. Thanks for coming on and talking about what's happening in the world of trucking. So with that, let's go lose some iron, folks. Out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.